When we graph from factored form, we use our intercepts. Remember that the word intercepts, solution, zeros, roots all means the same thing. So our very first step is to set each factor equal to 0, and that gives us our x-intercepts. So in this example, we got -1 and 5. So we put those points on our x-axis. Our second step is to find our vertex. Our vertex is going to be located halfway between the intercepts. So in order to find the middle, we take the average of those numbers. To do the average, you add those two things together and you divide by 2. We got 2. So we know the middle is going to happen at x is equal to 2. In order to find out where along this x equals 2 line, we plug the 2 into the original equation. So that becomes 2 plus 1 times 2 minus 5, and then we follow order of operations and we get our y value. That creates the point 2, -9. I plugged in 2, I got -9. That's where this vertex comes from. And now I have 3 points, so I can make my graph. So we're going to do these together. So our first step is we find our intercepts. We find our intercepts by finding our solutions, which is also called our zeros. So I get x is equal to 1, and I get x is equal to -3. So on my graph, I plot a point at 1 and at -3. Then I find my vertex. I find my vertex by taking the average of the x-intercepts. The average means you add them up and you divide by 2. So when I add them up, I get -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. So that tells me the x value of my vertex is -1. I don't know the y yet. In order to get the y, I take my equation and I replace the x with a -1. I'm plugging in the x value. I follow order of operations, so I do what's inside the parentheses first, and then I multiply those answers together. I get -4. So that tells me my coordinate of my vertex, -1, -4. And then I'm going to draw my graph. Next, I have x minus 2, so that's going to equal 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. Add 2, so I get x is 2, so that goes on my graph. And then I subtract 4, so x is -4, and that goes on my graph. Those are my intercepts. Remember, intercepts, roots, zeros, solutions all mean the same thing. Now I need to find my vertex. My vertex is halfway between my intercepts. So I add them up and I divide by 2 because that's going to give me my average. I get that it happens at -1. So somewhere along this -1 line is going to be my vertex. To find out exactly where, I have to get my y value. So I plug in that -1 to the x spot and then follow order of operations. I get -3 times 3, so y is equal to -9. So the point is -1, -9. And then I can make my curve.